everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. It is fall, it is getting cold, and it is the perfect time to make rice warmers. We're gonna make a couple rice warmers. We'll make one in the shape of a heart that's perfect for kids to snuggle up with at night. It's kind of like similar to a hot water bottle. Do you remember back in the day, they used to put the hot water bottles at the bottom of the bed to keep your feet warm? So we'll make one in the shape of a heart, and then we'll make one that can kind of go around your neck. So let's make some. Now, let's do it.
The first thing you want to do for your heart warmers is cut out a template, and you can use anything. I just used the back of this Cheerio box and just cut out a heart. What I did to make this is I took a regular piece of printer paper, folded the printer paper in half, and then outlined my heart so that it would be symmetrical on both sides, and then trace onto some kind of cardboard. So once you have your template, and I don't know why it says use this. I don't know what else I would be using besides this to make a template. You want to make sure to use flannel fabric. Quilting cotton will not work. Flannel. And you can get really creative with your flannel patterns. So make 2 of these, cut out 2. I have 2 here. What you're going to do is you're going to put right sides together, and you're going to sew all the way around the edge, but you want to leave an opening. You don't want to leave your opening around a curve. You want to leave your opening in an area that is as flat and straight as possible. So for this one, it's probably right about here. And I'm going to put a clip, or you can put a pin, on either side of where your hole is going to be. Because otherwise, what I would do is I would start to sew around, and then I would forget to stop, and then I would close it up, and I'd have to pick this part out. So you're not going to sew here. Let me give you the dimensions of this heart. So the widest part of this heart is about 13 inches, and from the base to the divot here is about 7.5. But you can make your heart any size you want. Now I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew about a 1/2 inch in from the edge all the way around to my other clip. Now I will make sure to back stitch a couple times right around this piece here, right around this little divot, because this is going to be the weakest part of your rice pillow. You can see I've marked with some blue tape here where the 1/2 inch line is. So I can just scooch my fabric right to that tape, and I'll know that that's a 1/2 inch. Now we're going to sew all the way until we're about a 1/2 inch away from the edge. Put your needle down and spin it. Then you're going to keep going, following along the edge of the fabric, 1/2 inch away from the edge of the fabric. When you get to this curve, you want to sew a little bit, and then you might want to put your needle down and turn your fabric a bit. Sew a little more. You can turn your fabric like I'm doing as you sew, but if it gets to a point where you feel like you're not going to follow the curve, just put the needle down and adjust the fabric and keep going. Keep sewing along that curve. Now that I've sewn all the way around, leaving a gap, I want to do it again, but just a little bit on the inside of your line. So now you'll be a little bit, just a hair closer to the edge of your fabric. Just a little bit. This is just to add a little bit extra stability. And go all the way around again, the exact same way you did the first time. You take your fabric scissors, and right at this cleavage here, you're going to cut a little triangle out right up to your seam line. Don't cut through the seam line, but just up to the seam line. And then cut out some triangles kind of along this curve here as well. I've cut the triangles out along the curve here. I probably cut more than I needed to. I'd say you could probably do every other one. And then right at the tip here, snip this tip off. And then I kind of just make some cuts along. This is just so it turns nicely and lays kind of flat. Next, we're gonna go to our hole. Here's the hole that we created right here. And flip this right side out. When you've put it right side out, take a bone folder. If you don't have one of these, this is for origami. You can use a popsicle stick or a butter knife and just push out the seam all the way along the edge. You may notice that the cleavage here is pulling a bit. That's normal. And what I would do is just take a seam ripper and just pluck out, I typically just pluck out one seam. If it's really pulling, you could pluck out, you know, 2, maybe 3, but I wouldn't do any more than that. This just keeps it from pulling. There, so that'll lay a little bit flatter. And since we did the double seam on the inside, it will still be nice and secure. Next, we're gonna fill our pillow with rice, and then we'll close up our seam and we'll be done. I have a measuring cup here and my rice. I am gonna tell you how much rice, how many cups of rice to put in here. I also have made this funnel. You do not need this funnel. You can just pour your rice right in from the spout right into the hole. But this, you know, this keeps it from, this decreases the chance of making a big mess because you just pour the rice in here and then it funnels into your pillow. But let's see how many cups. I put 3.5 cups into my pillow here, and that feels pretty good. You could make it a little heavier or a little lighter. The rice that I'm using, you can really use any rice. I used this enriched long grain white rice, but I don't think it matters what kind of rice you use. So now we're gonna take this back over to the machine and as close to the edge as possible. So we're gonna fold these, this was our seam here that's kind of sticking out. We're gonna push this seam into the pillow and top stitch as close to the edge as we can. So I just sewed this up. When you sew it up, you want to shake all the rice to the other end of the pillow so that when you're sewing, it doesn't fall out. Start and end with a little back stitch to make sure it's extra secure, and you just sew as close to the edge as you can, just along the opening. You don't need to sew around the whole pillow. I just put this warmer in for 2 minutes, and it is pretty hot. I like my warmers so hot that you almost need a piece of fabric in between yourself and the warmer. So if you don't like them that hot, I would say maybe 1.5 minutes. If you're warming this up for a child, I'd say definitely 1.5 minutes. But I usually put mine in for 2 minutes. You just have to be careful. The other thing is that when I microwave these, I put it in on top of a plate, and that way if there's any food remnants in the microwave, it won't dirty up your fabric. Let's make one for your neck now. For the neck warmer, I have this pretty fabric here. I'm going to put this fabric in half, right sides together, and put the edge, the crease, and put the crease of my fabric, the fold, this is the fold, along your cutting mat. Now, you don't need to use a cutting mat and rotary cutter and ruler for this. It doesn't need to be that exact. You can just use scissors. But the point is that having the crease here, having the fold, means that it eliminates having to sew one side because this side is already enclosed. But I'm gonna measure 7 inches over and cut straight up. Then you're going to, I'm going to trim off this bottom part here because that's the selvage. So I'm going to trim that off. And then I'm going to measure 21 inches from the bottom up to the top, which would put me right about here. I'm going to leave my opening on this long side here, but I'll sew all the way down over, leave my opening, sew over and up, 1/2 inch from the edge, and then sew another seam just a tiny bit closer to the edge than that. Remember, you don't need to sew up here because that's the fold, it's already enclosed. I have sewn my 2 seams all the way around, leaving a little opening. Where's my opening? Right here. Leaving my opening. Now there's no curves, so you don't need to cut the little triangles around the curves, but you should cut these corners off because that will reduce the bulk. We'll just make it look a little nicer. Now I'm gonna flip this right side out. So this rectangle warmer has more corners than the heart one. And so you just want to make sure to poke the corners out. Now this warmer has about 6 1/4 cup of rice inside. And again, here's my hole. I'm just gonna make sure that those seams are tucked in there, that they're not sticking out like that you kind of tuck them in. And then sew as close to the edge right along here. Make sure to start with a back stitch and end with a back stitch. Sew that shut.
So this one I put in for 3 minutes, and again, it's pretty hot. Like I should probably not have this directly on my skin. So you might want to start with like 2.5 minutes, see how that goes. One thing that's important is that once you warm this up and it cools down, do not put it in the microwave again until the next day. You're gonna feel it and you're gonna think this is totally cool, it can go back in the microwave, but what you don't realize is there are little pieces of rice that are still warm inside, and it burns the warmer and you can't use it again. Ask me how I know. I've actually done it more than once because I'm always convinced. I'm like, this must be cool by now. But it's not. So wait overnight, and then by the next morning, it'll be fine to warm up again. Other thing that is a little tip is that if you have a big rice bag that you're using, like I was, as you get lower and lower into the bag, what I realized is that as you're pouring it into the measuring cup, the rice kind of starts to spill everywhere. But if you cut the top of the bag off so you're using less bag, it's easier to be accurate when you're pouring into your measuring cup. I did make a third one. I started to make a third one. So this one here that I made was 7 by 21. I started to make one that was a tiny bit shorter, which also could go over the neck. This one is 7 by 18. 7 by 18. I just ran out of rice, which is why I couldn't finish it. This one has 4 cups of rice in it, and actually, I mean, the 4 cups, I probably could just close this up and it would be fine. Now that I'm feeling it, I might actually do that. But it depends how you like it. You could put another cup in here for sure. So if you do 7 by 18, you'll probably want 5 cups. These make great Christmas gifts. You can make them for the whole family. You can make the little heart ones for the kids, or a heart one for your loved one would be super cute. And the fabrics, I mean, you can just get so creative with the fabrics. You could make a whole matching set for the family. I will see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for joining me. Bye.